Welcome to Spirit's Journey, coming to you live on Truth Frequency Radio and simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. Your hosts are Patrick and Kathryn Andries.
Join us each week as we explore a wide range of metaphysical topics such as dreams, astrology, intuitive readings, and life purpose. You'll receive practical guidance so that you can live your most awesome life.
Learn more about what we do at intuitiveschool.com and connect with us on Facebook at Spirit's Journey Radio. Welcome to Spirit's Journey. We are coming to you on Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception, simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. You can also find us on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and TalkStream Live. We're here in the Heartland, holding the energy for spiritual truth and awareness. I'm Patrick.
And I'm Kathryn. Welcome, everyone.
Today we're going to be talking about life purpose, so settle in, and we're going to be talking about a lot of topics that we feel are going to be interesting to everybody who is listening and joining us today.
And first, we want to remind everybody we have an amazing event coming up called the Reignite Your Light Summit. This is a journey to the heart of your soul. You're going to learn a lot of amazing things from a group of amazing presenters, and you've already heard a lot of these presenters on our radio show the past couple weeks. Robert Mack, Joelle St. Germain, we have Dee Wallace coming up, we have Dan Millman coming up. So it's just going to be an amazing event. It's in Florida, June 22nd and 23rd. And the purpose of this event is to help people release limiting thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors, discovering why it's important to listen, and being willing to follow your inner calling, which is something we're going to talk about on today's show. How to really just live in the light and be your authentic self, experience more abundance and passion in your life, and pursue your dream of making, a greater impact on the world, whatever that may be for you. So please, if you want to find out more about that event, go to reigniteyourlightevents.com, or you can contact 561-704-8634. And so today we chose this topic of life purpose because over and over again, we see people that are confused, they're unhappy. And really, at the root of that is that they're not in tune with their life purpose. And so anybody who's followed my work or read any of my books knows that that's a huge topic that I write about, that I speak about all the time, because I really feel that it's at the core of changing ourselves and changing the world. If everybody was really focusing on their passions, doing their life purpose, we really would be living in a different world. But a lot of us have gotten thrown off the path for different reasons, which we're going to talk about. And so that creates this sense of frustration and unhappiness. And I've been there. I know a lot of other people have been too. And then when we get back on track, we're like, oh my gosh, how did I get derailed? And it feels so good to be back on track. So I want to start out by sharing my vision and my understanding of what a life purpose is. So from the soul's perspective, it has two jobs to do when it comes into the physical body. And the first one is developing the passions, the gifts, the talents, whatever those may be. It could be many of them. And then sharing them with the world. The second part of the purpose is to overcome or master challenges. So if you look at the soul as a puzzle, and that each lifetime, the soul wants to fill in some of those puzzle pieces, which are areas where we just may lack experience. That's part of the lesson too. So if lessons is kind of a scary word for you, if you think, oh God, a lesson, I like to look at it also as an area where we lack experience. And so that's why we have so many varied opportunities based on the lifetime that we choose to experience all the different things we need to become masters at everything. So those are the two parts of a purpose. And so over time, yes, within that, they can change. So maybe the talents that you brought out when you were 15, are different than the talents that you're going to bring out when you're 30. Likewise, the lessons that you may have been trying to overcome when you were a kid are different than the lessons that you're facing as an adult. However, the umbrella, in other words, gifts and talents and lessons, stays the same. So in a nutshell, that is a life purpose. So it seems really simplistic. And do you have anything you want to add to that, Patrick?
Well, whenever I look at life purpose, there's the two main parts. I think of the mission, which is what we want to accomplish and what we want to learn. And so it's really looking at our life from a different perspective. It's taking it back to the point where, if a lot of us look at this when we're in this kind of a spiritual realm, or a spiritual field, we're looking at the idea that we are not just these physical bodies running around, that there is this spiritual side to us, and that's really an energetic side. It's that we are beings of energy and light, that we are eternal beings, and we've had an existence before this lifetime. We will continue to have an existence after this lifetime. So when we're talking about life purpose, it's really looking at the big picture. It's going beyond just this lifetime. It's looking at the kinds of aspirations that we had coming into our life and the things that we want to accomplish on a large scale. It's really the learning that we want to add to ourselves as a spiritual being that we are going to take with us beyond this life into our next existence and beyond. So it's really looking at the grand scope of things as a spiritual being. But if that's too much for you, then you could just really look at it as your life legacy. What is it that you want to accomplish while you are here? What do you want to leave behind to your family, your friends, your loved ones, your community? And so those are the kinds of things that we're talking about with life purpose. It's kind of looking at the big picture of your life. But then the reason why we're going through all that is because we want to bring that back down to, okay, this is our ideal for our life, but what can I start doing today that can start helping me move in that direction? And just to close this point, there was an example that came to mind a long, long time ago when I was teaching a class, and it really stuck with me that when we're looking at life purpose, when we're looking at our ideals for our life, it reminded me of the ancient sailors. They used to use the stars to navigate by. And on their ships, they could never reach the stars, but the stars gave them direction. So their goals then, or our goals in our life, are more like the port. We're trying to get somewhere in our life. That's what we're going to actually accomplish. But then our purpose or our ideals, that's kind of like the long vision that guides us. And so the stars guide us to the port, and as long as we follow those stars, then we will reach our destination, which is the port. So that's one reason why we talk about life purpose and teach about life purpose, because it gives us that overall direction in our life.
And I love the image, Patrick, you were talking about, that we're building understandings, experiences, and so forth, gifts and talents that we're going to take with us. So I like to look at it as building blocks. So whatever you are building in your current lifetime, it won't go to waste. In other words, you get to take all those understandings, all those experiences with you into your next existence. So if you think about it, every moment of every day, every thought you think, everything you create, everything you do in that instance is partly shaping your next lifetime. So the more that you build, the more building blocks you gather, the more experiences, the easier your next life will become. So you might stop and take stock of your life right now and see that you are the person you are today because of all the experience you've had in past lives as well as in the current lifetime. And so if you've had a pretty good life so far, you've already built up a lot of experiences. And so continue to do so. Now, here's a great exercise I'm going to give everybody that you can do to really kind of look at the perspective of what's your life about. So I want you to imagine that you get to write your own obituary and see what comes through when you write it. It will help you really see, wow, how do I want to be remembered by people? So a lot of times we get caught up in the goals that we want to achieve. So you can put that in your obituary as well. Like, Jane Doe became president of the bank, or, whatever the physical goals are. And then also weave into that how you imagine people remembering you. She was a friend to everybody she met, and, things like that. I remember one time Oprah was talking, and she said, they were talking about the word nice. And she said, well, that's so boring. I don't want to just be remembered as being nice, and that always stuck with me. I thought, wow, that's interesting. Nice is kind of like a bland word. It's, it's just kind of bland, nice. Well, what does that really mean? So think of some dynamic words that you want to leave behind, and write that. And if you'd love to share it with us on Facebook at Spirit's Journey, please do so, and we'll share ours as well. And while we're talking about that, I want to share my life purpose, because I did a lot of extensive work in trying to understand at the core of what am I here to do. So I encapsulated it all into what I call a life purpose statement. And that's one of the things that I teach in my classes. And so my life purpose is to teach metaphysical and alternative health concepts in creative ways through classes, books, workshops, and speaking engagements. And so that's like Patrick was talking about. Those are my stars. That's my guiding journey that I follow. Do you want to share what your life purpose is, Patrick?
Well, my life purpose really revolves around understanding the mind and how the mind works, using our mind as a creative mechanism. So that's also related to my mission. So part of my life purpose is building that discipline within myself and really honing my skills, not just to create wealth or nice things in my life, but really understanding the mechanics. And ultimately, I feel like the goal of our learning how to use our visualization abilities to create is really to turn that on ourselves, to use it to actually become conscious creators of our own learning. So, in effect, it's really taking responsibility for our evolution as a spiritual being. So, we talk about things like karma sometimes, and karma is this process of where our experiences come back to us so that we can learn from them and experience what we've created. And that's sort of an unconscious process, though. That comes back to us, and sometimes it kind of kicks us in the pants to give us a wake-up call and say, hey, look, you're not really paying attention to what you're doing here. Look at what you're doing to these other people. Look at what you're doing to yourself. But when we start taking that proactive step to understand how the mind works, and we use that creative ability to be responsible for our growth, our learning, our evolution, then we really become conscious creators. And so as spiritual beings, we are getting into the driver's seat, which is a really exciting place. There are so many places we can go when we get into the driver's seat and really accept responsibility for being a creator and accept responsibility for our learning.
And so as we talk about life purpose, one of the things that helps people is focusing on the positive rather than the negative. So let me give you an example. So as you noticed, when Patrick and I talked about our life purpose, it was all the direction we wanted to move in. Sometimes one thing that throws people off is they focus on what they don't want or what they want to fight against. So for example, somebody might say, my life purpose is to, fight against corporations, or fight against censorship. So that's a negative. You could turn that around. You can still have the essence of that purpose, but positive would be, my life purpose is about bringing freedom to the world as opposed to censorship, right? So you're working towards freedom instead of against censorship. So sometimes when I teach my classes, people will, and that really, it's kind of a negative energy, and your mind creates whatever you focus on. So if you say, my life purpose is to fight against tyranny, well, you're actually promoting that. So you want to say the positive flip of that, which is, I am promoting freedom.
There was one thing I wanted to mention with that too, which is that, it kind of reminds me of when I was growing up. The smoking signs would be all over the place. And so you'd see this cigarette with some smoke coming off of it, and there would be this big red line through it. So when we're talking about visualization, the way the mind creates is through creating an image in the mind. And so you create that image and you hold on to that for a period of time. And as you hold that image in your mind, then energy is directed toward that image. And so then all of these forces start drawing that into your life. So you can imagine a smoker looking at that sign, seeing that nice cigarette. And what do you think that stimulates within a smoker's mind? They're thinking, oh man, I haven't had a cigarette in so long. That cigarette looks so good. I want one right now. So that's what we're talking about. That when we are focusing on a particular image, you actually create more of that in your life. And so, you might remember the war on drugs. And so it's this image of creating a war. You're battling drugs. It's a fight against the drugs. Well, it isn't the drugs. It's people who are choosing to use the drugs, and it's people who are choosing to make the drugs to sell them. So it would actually be much more productive to create an image of teaching people how to be healthy, teaching people how to use their creativity in their life to create their life the way that they want it to be, instead of feeling like they have to escape by using drugs. And so that's a much more positive image. So that's what we're talking about, is being very specific. Sometimes positive thinking gets a bad rap because I feel like it was very misunderstood. People felt like, well, I'm just pretending. Well, it wasn't just about pretending, and it may start out that way sometimes, but it's more about creating a very clear image of what it is that you do want. So when we're talking about a positive image, it's the image of what you want instead of focusing so much energy on what you don't want.
All right. And so, along with that, when we do get into that negative mode or what we don't want, we can get derailed. So, I want to talk about, before we actually get into talking a lot about the life purposes, first of all, understanding how do we get derailed? Because a lot of us are. I've been there. I continually have, red flags that come up that are like, oh, this is going to be a derailment if I go in that direction. And sometimes I take it and I'm like, oh my gosh, why did I do that? So let's talk about some of those reasons, Patrick, and even share our own experiences. So one of them that I know almost everybody maybe at some point has been tempted by or actually done it, is getting derailed by money. We may be pulled in a direction that offers us a lot of money, even though it is not our passion. It's not really aligned with our purpose. Now, I know we have financial responsibilities, and sometimes we need to take those opportunities. And that's okay if it's short term and if we have the understanding that this is going to get us to the next place so that we can focus on our purpose. But the real derailment happens when we stay there. In other words, the money feels good, it gets kind of cushy and comfortable, and we're like, oh, well, getting this regular paycheck, and, it's not so bad. That's when it becomes a problem, when we lose sight of the fact that it was supposed to be something temporary. That's one of the things. I've been there, and I've had to sometimes step away from my passions and my purpose for financial reasons, but I always had it in the mindset, okay, this is temporary. It's just going to get me over this hump. So the second big derailment is just not being connected to the inner self to be able to hear what your heart's telling you. So there's so many distractions in the world, whether it's technology, people, whatever. Sometimes it's even our own mind. We have a very busy, chatty, conscious mind that can just completely keep us shut off from the inner subconscious mind, where the deeper thoughts, the deeper emotions and feelings that we have telling us, where direction to go, that we just don't hear. So again, we've got to find tools to quiet that mind, whether it's meditation, whether it's breathing exercises. I mean, yoga is one of my favorite methods to calm that mind. Some people have difficulty just sitting and being silent. So again, do something that involves movement, like yoga, walking, meditation, tai chi. Another activity that I love to do to quiet my mind, but I'm still engaged, is folding laundry. Now, that may seem kind of strange to some of you, but I keep the room all quiet. It's not an activity that requires any kind of mental effort. I just do it. But when I'm in that space, it's just kind of quiet and I'm able to, get the chores done. And sometimes I get some good, cool insights that come to me. So whatever works for you, the more that you can get quiet, the less likely you're going to be to get derailed, because you're going to have a connection to that inner self. Another big derailment, of course, is the desires, the hopes and wishes of other people. Our parents, our teachers, a lot of people in our lives feel that we should go in a particular direction. And in this case, the strongest will wins. In other words, if your parents are stronger willed about you becoming, let's say, a lawyer, than what you are wanting to become, their image is going to win. So sometimes we have to ask ourselves, well, whose picture am I following here? Is this the picture that my parents wanted for me? Is this the picture that, my boyfriend or my girlfriend wanted for me? Whatever. We get all these images in our minds, and sometimes we have to separate what are mine versus other people's. And how do we do that? Again, we have to get quiet. Sometimes it requires going away for a weekend on our own to clear our minds and see what it is that we really need and want for ourselves versus other people. Do you have any derailments that you've experienced, Patrick, or that you feel are pretty common among people?
Well, yeah, I've seen some of these in myself as well as people that I've worked with over the years. I would say that one of the biggest ones is a lack of discipline. We don't really think a lot of times about having discipline in our mind and being able to hold our attention where we want it to be for as long as we want it to be there. When I'm working with younger people, it seems like there's this tendency where they want to be entertained all the time because there is so much entertainment with our technology. It is everywhere. When I was growing up, all we had really was radio and television, and then computers came on and video games, and now all of that power of entertainment is just right in the palm of our hands. We can carry it in our pockets and our purses everywhere that we go. And so there is this kind of a tendency now where I'm finding more and more that people are wanting to be entertained at all times of the day. There's this reluctance to do anything that resembles work and putting effort into accomplishing the things that we want. And so a lot of times that translates into how we use our mind, that when we're watching television, when we're playing a video game or something like that, that's a passive use of attention because there's something that is actively grabbing our attention and just running wild with it. And so when marketers and filmmakers, people like that, they use those techniques that are built into our biology. And we call that sometimes like, the shiny object syndrome, where the shiny object gets the attention. And the reason why that developed in our evolution was because, originally you can imagine walking out in the wilderness somewhere and you might be stalked by a predator. So you would need to be able to notice something kind of moving in the bushes, and it was self-preservation. Well, even today we still need that, because even just walking down the street, you might step off the curb and then all of a sudden you see a flash of red and you hesitate for a moment because it catches your attention, and then you realize that somebody's getting ready to run the red light. And so being able to stop in that process could save your life. But that gets used against us in advertising. So they capture our attention and then they drag us wherever they want us to go. And so we need to develop that internal self-discipline to be able to fight against being taken advantage of by the media, first and foremost, but then second of all, to be able to accomplish the things that we want in our life. Because when we go down this path and we're always just wanting everything to be as fun as possible and entertaining at all times during the day, then we have this kind of a reluctance, or even as far as I'd say an inability to be able to focus our mind when we really want it to be there. So there is a need, younger people, I tell them there's a need to be able to do things that maybe are not the most exciting thing that you can think of to be doing during the day at that moment. But unfortunately, there are times when there are things that we need to get done, but that they lead to something else that we really want. So we need to be able to bring ourselves to bear to get those things done, and to keep the bigger picture in mind, to see where all these things are going. So that is a big thing that I find is that self-discipline. And there's exercises that you can do to develop that. There's exercises that we teach to be able to develop that discipline of mind. The other thing is self-worth, is that I feel that sometimes we get sidetracked because if we don't really feel that we are worthy of whatever it is that we have in mind, sometimes we will actually sort of sabotage ourselves. And that's really the unconscious part of the mind, sort of undermining our efforts to create those things because, we don't really feel like we have earned it. Sometimes people feel like they have to get just the right certification, or they have to put in the time, or all these different things that they feel like they need to do to be worthy of having what it is that they want. So those are some other things that I've seen, in addition to all the things that Kathryn talked about that could derail us.
Yeah, I would totally agree about the self-worth. Yeah.
So we are coming up on the break. This is the bottom of the hour, so we'll be going into a short break. During the break, please remember that you can go to our page at tfrlive.com and become a supporter of Spirit's Journey as well as Truth Frequency Radio. You will gain access to all the archives of all time for all the shows when you do that. And also, you can check out more about what we do at intuitiveschool.com. So for now, this is Spirit's Journey on Truth Frequency Radio, simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio, and we will see you on the other side. Welcome back from the break. This is Spirit's Journey coming to you on Truth Frequency Radio, being simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. I am Patrick.
And I'm Kathryn. Welcome back. We are talking about life purpose. It's a huge topic. It's the core to creating a life of wealth, abundance, happiness, and anything else that's good. So we really want to dig in now to one method of finding your life purpose, which is what I teach, which is called the 6 Paths to Finding Your Life Purpose. So it began for me when traditional routes really weren't giving me the answers I was looking for. And so I'd always been interested in metaphysics. And so I decided to kind of go an alternative route when I was in my late 20s. And I said, I'm going to go see an astrologer. I was always intrigued by, what could astrology tell me about myself? So during that astrology reading, I was just completely blown away by what I learned about myself, my passions, my challenges. It was the first time I really felt like somebody knew me and was connecting with me at a deep level. And so I'm the type of person that's like, okay, I got to learn how they did that. Whenever I'm really impressed by something or amazed, I'm like, I want to figure out how they're doing that. And so that's exactly what I proceeded to do. So I learned astrology, became an astrologer, began practicing one-on-one with people. And then that, of course, led me to the 5 other paths, which is numerology, palmistry, iris analysis, family birth order, and past lives. And the reason I kept exploring more topics is because they were revealing different parts of myself in a very accurate, precise way. I like to refer to these paths as intuitive sciences because they are based on science. And there's also a little bit of intuition that comes into play when we're practicing these pursuits. So I wrote the book Soul Choices: 6 Paths to Find Your Life Purpose. And I outline how you use each one of these methods to reveal the 2 parts of your purpose. And so if you watch the beginning of the show, you know that I talk about the purpose has 2 parts. One is discovering what are your gifts and talents. And the second is what are your challenges, and then mastering them. And so each one of these 6 intuitive sciences does an amazing job of revealing what are the gifts and talents, what are the challenges. And so if you just stick with one path, that's a start. You're going to learn a lot about yourself and you're going to make some progress. But then you're going to get to a point where you're like, well, what's next? And that's where you say, okay, I'm going to delve into another one of the paths. So a lot of times the paths will say the same thing. In other words, they'll validate each other. Sometimes, though, they give you a completely different perspective of yourself. And I know that happened to me. Palmistry was one of the last of the 6 paths that I delved into. I think mainly because it's not as popular as the others, so it's more difficult to find a good teacher. So it took me a little bit. After reading a lot of books, I finally found a teacher and drove to his house in Los Angeles to give private classes with him because I really wanted to learn his method because I felt like that was the most accurate. So anyway, when I finally got into the palmistry, I found out that I had a fire palm. And I was like, oh, there's my fire, because in my astrology, my numerology, I didn't have a lot of fire, but I feel like I'm a pretty enthusiastic person when I get excited about something. And so finally the palmistry revealed that was where my fire was. So if you are interested in learning about this method, you can go to discoveryourlifepurpose.org, and you're going to be introduced to the book. You're going to hear a video, some stories, some testimonials. It's just a fun place to go to get some different perspectives on life purpose. And ultimately, you can sign up for the class, which is the secret codes of your life purpose. And so I basically tell people, there are codes, the letters in your name, the lines in your hands, the patterns in your eyes. Those are all codes. And you have to figure out how to decode what those messages are. And when you do, you discover your purpose. So that's the basis of the course. I hold your hand throughout the 6 methods. I tell you exactly what to do to find out. So you can do it with a friend, with a spouse, anybody who's interested in this kind of stuff, and you can kind of work together. It's kind of fun. So let's talk a little about career, because I know a lot of people are just like, well, I don't know what my purpose is. I want to find a career that I like. I hear that over and over again because, we have our financial needs that we have to take care of. I get that. So I'll tell you, in the beginning, when I started out in this work, I did think that it was career. I thought, okay, my life purpose is my career. But, our career may last 30 years, but we may live 90. So what about the other 60 years? What are we doing? So your life purpose is not a career. However, career is one avenue through which your life purpose can be expressed. So it does fit in that sense. And I teach some really cool techniques to understand how to select a career that's going to best support you fulfilling your mission. So that's what it's all about. It's about alignment. It's about aligning the purpose, the passion, as well as working with the challenges and fitting those all into a career. And sometimes one career isn't it. Now people are changing careers very often compared to before. People used to stay in a career for 40, 50 years. So I kind of look at career as stepping stones, and that maybe one career supports our gifts and talents for a while, and then we say, we're ready to move on to something else. And so we need a different kind of career. And so some people, are one career people for their whole lives. Other people switch around. Everybody's different. So one of the techniques that I teach is to make a chart. And what you do is you put the different careers that you're thinking of on one side. And then on the top, like in a graph, you're going to put the 6 paths, the astrology, the numerology, the palmistry. And then what you do is you go down and you look at each possible career that you're thinking about and you rate it. For example, 1 to 5. Let's say I was thinking about being an accountant or a dancer. 2 completely different careers. So I would look at accountant and I would look at my astrology chart and say, okay, do my gifts and talents based on my astrology chart support or not support being an accountant? And then I'd rate it. 1 would be it doesn't support it. 5 would be yes, right on. And then you kind of do a tally up. So it's a kind of a left brain way to work with a lot of this material, but it works and it's pretty powerful. Of course, there's some great techniques in astrology and in numerology to really hone in on the purpose related to your career. And I teach people how to do that. So, Patrick, do you have any comments that you want to make about career and how it fits into life purpose?
Well, one of the things that came to my mind when you were talking about career is how there's a growing trend where people are switching careers more often throughout their life than they used to. And I know that technology is part of that, but I also, understanding metaphysics, I look at how our consciousness reflects in our life and our life begins to reflect the changes occurring in our consciousness. So I think all of these things are working together. That it used to be that people would go to college, they would stick with their major throughout college, they would graduate, they would come out and they would get a career and stay in that career for 30, 35 years until they're retired. But now it seems like people are changing their majors, 2 or 3 times, and when they get out they may change their careers 4 or 5 times throughout their lifetime. And I believe that part of what is occurring, at least, is that we are becoming more aware in some ways of what it is that we want to be doing. So we are actually, there are forces moving in our life that are helping us to align more with what we came here to do. So I think that, like what you were saying, that's kind of what triggered that we might work one career for a while, and we take the learning from that. And then once we kind of reach that saturation point where we've learned what we needed to out of that, then we move on to the next career. So I think, that goes back to what we were talking about before, that we are spiritual beings. We aren't just these physical bodies running around. And so we do have a broader experience. We do have something more that all of this is moving towards. So when we look at the learning in our career, then I think it gives us a lot of insight into what we are building within ourselves, that, some of these things that we can even take with us beyond this lifetime. And then, when we look at life purpose, and I talked earlier about mission, and the mission we haven't talked a lot about yet, but that's really the gift that we want to give to the world. And so that is a legacy. Sometimes people think of it as a legacy that they want to leave behind after this lifetime. And so I think when we look at our gift to the world in those terms, then it can help us make more meaningful lifetime choices as well as lifestyle choices throughout our life.
And so it's kind of like, how can we turn our passions into profits? That's a lot of what people are looking for today. And the good news is you can do it easily through entrepreneurship. A lot of people are, wanting to be an entrepreneur anyway, but I find a lot of the people that I work with into these metaphysical fields who have these interesting passions, they're just not fitting into the mainstream career deal. And in order to really fully bring out our passions, a lot of times it's hard in a corporate setting or when somebody else is your boss, because they have an image, they have a goal, and, they don't care about your passions. And so in order to really fully harness the power of your passions, a lot of times it means you need to be an entrepreneur. So I'm just putting it out there for those of you who are in a job that you're not liking. Consider the path of an entrepreneur. It has so many advantages, so much growth. And if you feel at all drawn to that, there are so many resources now to help entrepreneurs. It's a huge learning curve. You become the marketer, the creative person. You have so many hats that you wear. But in the end, the advantage and the fulfillment of being able to express your passions in your way outweighs anything that stability of that weekly paycheck can bring.
And one of the things we were talking about earlier is becoming responsible for our learning and growth. And, that's one thing that I found as being an entrepreneur that has helped me do. And I know the word responsibility gets a bad rap a lot of times. We kind of feel like it's a bummer or it's a burden. But if you break down the word, I feel like it's really two words that were used together: responsibility. It's our ability to respond to our desires. It's our ability to respond to our inner soul growth and our inner soul needs. And entrepreneurship gives us that flexibility to really unleash our creativity and to use our mind to learn how to become conscious, responsible creators in the universe. And so if you want that ultimate experience of really being able to use your mind to the fullest, to be a fully realized spiritual being, then creating your own business, taking responsibility for initiating your own path is really an exciting way to do that.
And of course, along the way, like I said, you're going to have challenges. And so let's talk about that for a minute, because it's a question that we get a lot, where people say, if I'm running into a lot of challenges on the path that I'm going, does that mean I'm not supposed to go in that direction? And that's not just a, one answer fits all. It really depends on each individual case. But in general, just because you're experiencing a challenge does not mean that you're not supposed to go in that direction. Usually, if your soul does not want you to go in that direction, it's going to be, a pretty big signal that this is the wrong path. Now, you can read story after story of people who have had one, challenge after another, one rejection after another, if you were a writer. And then finally, the 150th letter that you send out, if you're a writer, your query letter gets accepted. So don't think that a struggle means, oh, this is the wrong path. Now, again, you're going to have to look at your different charts, the 6 paths, and see if the direction you're going in is supported by those paths, then stick with it. Those challenges are there for a reason. They're making you stronger. Perhaps they're waking you up to things that you may have not have seen that could cause problems later on down the line. So I would say that first thing when you're experiencing challenges is assessing, okay, is this path in alignment with what I'm here to do? Look at the 6 paths. If it is in alignment, then, look at the challenges that show up in the 6 paths and say, oh, this is just some of those challenges that I'm encountering that I'm supposed to learn from. And your career is just being a vehicle for you to learn those. And then, you're killing 2 birds with 1 stone, because your career becomes not only a way for you to overcome your challenges, but also a way for you to bring out your gifts and talents. Now, I've had students in the past say, well, I'm afraid to fully fulfill my life purpose because I'm afraid I might die. And I tell them, well, our life purpose is about potential and energy, and there really is no limit to your potential or energy. So don't worry that, you're going to master your life purpose and then, that's going to be the end. There really is no limit to how many gifts and talents you can bring out, how many people you can affect in a positive way, and how much you can learn. So, that is something that you should not even be considering in terms of fearing of fulfilling the purpose early.
One thing that I would say about that too is really looking at the word fulfillment, because when you are fulfilling your life purpose, it doesn't mean that as soon as you're done, you're going to die and cease to exist or something like that. The fulfillment really means that you are on track, you are on your path. And so that's really when life gets exciting. That's been my experience. And when I talk to others who get on their path and they start living their passions, they talk about how much more exciting life can be than they ever could imagine. And so that's the kind of excitement we would like to help everybody experience. And so when we're talking about fulfilling your life purpose, that's what we're talking about is getting on target. And there's a big difference between being on target and being off target. And, when we go back, we were talking about navigating by the stars. It's like if the ship is not going toward that star, you're going to miss your port. You may get lost and have a lot of suffering as you're trying to find your way. And so when you get on that target, when you get directed in that way so that you are on your path, then you start meeting your objectives. You start accomplishing your goals. Things start to just fall into place. And it's really amazing how easy things can be and exciting. It doesn't mean that there will never be challenges anymore. And that's one of the things, we're trying to encourage people when they have these challenges. Sometimes those challenges come up because that's the next step in your learning. Challenges equal learning. When you meet those challenges and you learn from them, then you can take that learning to the next step. And then you have another challenge that's even bigger and better than the last one. So each challenge that you face has a gift, and that gift is knowledge and learning and understanding along the way.
And that's a great point, Patrick, because sometimes when we're going through a challenge, we feel like we're off our purpose. And, we feel definitely on purpose when we're doing our passions. That's the fun part, the gifts and talents. But sometimes the challenges, we don't see them as part of our purpose and we feel like we got derailed. But like you said, if you learn from that, you're definitely on your purpose. So whether it's a challenge or, sharing your gifts and talents, you're still on the path. So we want to take this in a little interesting direction here. We talked in the beginning about being for something as opposed to against something when you're forming your purpose. So rather than being against, tyranny, you would say, I'm for freedom. And we've been noticing, as I'm sure a lot of you have, that there seems to be this creeping in of censorship, especially of corporations in regards to our health freedoms. I've been a big proponent of health freedom, choice of people whether to vaccinate or not, choice of by the people of whether they want to take a vitamin supplement or a pharmaceutical drug, whether they want to visit a Western doctor or an alternative doctor. It boils down to choice. And because we live in the United States, that's one of the things that we have here is the gift of freedom to choose. But those freedoms are under attack right now. And it's kind of scary. I can't even believe it's happening in America, but it's all about the dollar. And these big corporations are buying, essentially, their influence. They're paying people off to be able to influence in the way they want and to censor people who are against what they want. It's not really that new, but the scope of which they're doing it is new.
Well, I don't know if I necessarily agree that it's always about the dollar. I think there's a lot of competing agendas that are all kind of leading to the same thing. Some people think that they are actually trying to help others out by eliminating this new term, which is termed fake news. But I see a huge problem that is developing here, and I can't believe that I'm seeing this in my lifetime. But this is really reminiscent of the book burnings that used to occur years ago, but this is the digital version of book burnings, basically, is what we are witnessing here. And if you're not aware of what's going on, I invite you to look at some of the posts and social media things that are going on, if you can find them, because a lot of these things are being eliminated so that you are not aware of what's happening. But there are congressmen who are approaching companies like Facebook, and also Facebook was taking this on themselves even before they were approached. Google is involved in this. Pinterest, that sites that they don't agree with are being deleted. In Facebook's case, the postings are just pushed down into obscurity so that you never see them. So basically what is happening here, with Facebook just as one example, well, Google too is huge, but I know that these platforms serve billions of people. And so you have just a handful of people in these companies, maybe not even 100 people, maybe even less than that. You just a tiny fraction, a tiny handful of people who are deciding for you what is true and what is not true. And then if they determine by their own opinion that it is not true, then they will delete that information. They will delete somebody's entire account. We're not talking about hate crimes here. We're just talking about people who are posting information and trying to carry on thoughtful, open discussions about natural health care. And for me personally, I don't agree with everything that the Western medical philosophy teaches. There is this huge push to get us on medications to treat health conditions instead of doing natural things like eating healthy, exercising, directing your mind in a positive, productive manner. And, we do health readings. And so in those intuitive health readings, we see every day the connection between our thoughts and how our thoughts stimulate our emotions and how our emotions start affecting the body. There's example after example, but one of them that most people know, it's pretty well commonly known, is when you're holding on to anger, that will start to affect you physically. Well, the anger often affects the liver because when you're angry, you're releasing certain chemicals in the bloodstream, and the liver is a filter. And when you release those chemicals, your body knows those chemicals are not productive. The anger is intended for short bursts. Like, for example, if you are in a dangerous situation, that energy is intended to help you get out of that. But when we hold on to that over and over, it starts to poison our body. So your liver starts to filter that out. So that can lead to liver problems. Your liver can shut down. You can develop cancer because your cells start to mutate, and you can have all kinds of different problems. That's just one little example. There are so many examples that we could share with you about that. But that is not a concept that is understood in the Western medical model. They look at it as you have a need for medication. So they want to get you on this medication, and then you say, well, how long do I need to be on this? Well, you'll be on this for the rest of your life. Well, what kind of side effects? Oh, there's all these side effects. In fact, you're going to need this other medication to manage the side effects. So it's just this slippery slope where once you start down that path, it's very difficult to bring yourself back from it. So I choose to follow a natural path, but unfortunately, a lot of the information about natural healthcare is being suppressed. So please check into this and contact your legislators. Let them know that we want the internet to be free. And in my opinion, I feel one way to handle this is to declare these large-scale platforms like Facebook and Google and Pinterest. We are coming more and more to rely on these platforms for our communication. So I believe all these platforms, when they serve that many people, need to be declared public domain and protected by the federal free speech legislation. One reason they're able to get away with this right now is because they are private companies, and they're saying, well, we're a private company, so we can do whatever we want. So we will just delete this person we disagree with, and we will promote this person that we agree with. But it is a very, very dangerous precedent which is being set. So we are doing everything we can to promote free speech and make sure that our rights to be able to hear the information that we want to hear and be able to decide for ourselves is protected. That's really the key. Get all the information and you can decide for yourself. Well, I can't believe how quickly the time has gone because we are approaching the end of our show. We love having you with us. So please connect with us on Facebook at Spirits Journey Radio. Be sure to like our page so that you can be a part of our life. You can find out more about what we do, including the health ratings that I talked about, at intuitiveschool.com. And where can they find out about your book?
So the Discover Your Life Purpose course and the book is at discoveryourlifepurpose.org.
All right. This has been Spirit's Journey on Truth Frequency Radio, simulcast on Oneness Talk Radio. I'm Patrick Andries.
And I'm Kathryn. Have a super week and join us next week where we will be interviewing Kelly Kucha, who is going to be a presenter at the Reignite Your Light conference in Florida.
Goodbye for now.